Hello everyone and welcome to the first Telemedia News in 10 of 2021. Happy New Year, Paul.
Happy New Year, Jarv. Happy New Year, everyone who's tuning in. Let's hope it is a happier New Year than last year.
Exactly. Even if you're not interested in mobile content, mobile payments, mobile marketing, mobile messaging, you'd probably be interested to see how Paul and I are degenerating after nearly a year of lockdown. Paul's sporting a fantastic ponytail. My beard has got things living in it. And, if nothing else, it's interesting to see how COVID is affecting home workers. But without further ado, we're going to do this in two parts, Paul, because there's so much to talk about. We're going to start off with four of the news headlines that really struck us as being interested. We're going to bring you some news, the 10th anniversary from one of the leading monetization companies in our sector. We're going to talk about some new marketing channels and how advertising in-game is something that really struck us as being interesting. Seeing as it's the beginning of the year, we thought that we would look at some predictions that have come to us from Jonathan Kriegel of Docomo. And we're going to give you some news from the ever-growing, ever more important Telemedia 8.1 platform, which is going great guns, and I think going to be a really important way for the industry to gather together and continue to do business in these tricky times. And we're going to finish by hearing a little bit about what Paul's got planned in the upcoming issue of Telemedia magazine, which we're hoping will be out around about the second week of March. So without further ado, let's crack on, scroll up. And Paul, the first news story that really struck us, actually we were a bit late on this one, I've got to be honest. It was actually IMI Mobile sold to Cisco, and I'm sorry if this isn't new news for everyone, but we did predict last year that there would be a lot more M&A activity in 2021, and this one passed us by, which is surprising because it was a mere $750 million deal. What do you think about this one, Paul?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. It's all done a bit secret squirrel, so I'm not sure. A lot of people might know about it. A lot of people probably don't know about it. It did take a while to appear on my desk, but Christmas sort of got in the way. But yes, an interesting move. I think it is part of this sort of consolidation that we did sort of talk about at the end of last year that we're going to see across the industry. I think it's very interesting because Cisco have always been very large in this sort of unified messaging idea, particularly within corporations. So bringing together everyone's sort of telephone, voicemail, other mobile messaging and the rest of it for corporate clients. I think what they're looking to do here is part of this move we're seeing increasingly of adding in the sort of OTT and messaging type of communication. Now, my understanding of it is that Cisco really wants to use this initially to offer things like WhatsApp integration and other messaging integration as a sort of customer service channel for its corporate clients. But I think it's also a very small step from that sort of customer service idea into sort of customer messaging and interaction, and then, eventually into conversational commerce. So I think it's the first sort of big move outside of probably Centili doing it, where we've seen someone massive get into the conversational commerce thing. So I tried to get some comment out of Cisco and out of IMI, but no one will talk to us about anything. It's all completely like no comment. What's in the press release is all we're saying. So there's a lot of speculation about what it might mean, what it might be done for. But I think looking at it, I think it's fairly easy to see that it's going to be adding messaging services into like Cisco's corporate unified comms offering. And I think it's the beginnings of them getting into the idea of conversational commerce as an offering to its customers.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Interesting. There was a rumor, a little bird told me, in fact, that IMI might well be offloading their premium business as a result to make that work, which, as you rightly pointed out, means there's going to be a lot of potential new customers for the hardcore of existing providers out there. So probably quite good news for a number of our favourite companies.
The other side of it, you're right, that there will be suddenly a whole load of work for other people to pick up, which I think again will also generate a lot of heat in the sort of more traditional telemedia side of things. and again help propel some of those companies. Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, sadly, acronym alert, first one of the year, contact center as a service has now been mentioned in that press release. CCAAS. Please stop it. Although in fairness, they did. Yeah, I know. At least they did tell us what CCAAS meant. And I think we're going to see a lot of AASs throughout the year, aren't we? And
I think so. I think you're going to have to get used to this, Jarv. I know you hate the acronym.
I do.
I must admit, it does put a smile on my face that all of these acronyms are basically a load of R's.
Yeah.
I think sort of actually where it's going is not a load of R's. It's quite an interesting sort of thing. And I think we're going to come to this in a minute when we talk about Centili and its 10th anniversary. But this sort of idea of things as a service is going to be quite big, I think, in 2021.
It's spread like wildfire. It's been spread like a virus this year, isn't it? Okay, so on the theme of acronyms, OTT, we kind of got used to that one. The wonderful Digital Virgo and Molotov joined forces. And they're launching an OTT streaming service in French and English-speaking African countries. Massive emerging market. We talk about it a lot, and another great coming together of two perfectly matched partners, I'd say.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, the African market is moving very rapidly. In many ways, it sort of leapfrogs sort of many of the others because the infrastructure is more mobile. But I think also the pandemic has seen more people in Africa, like everywhere else, want to consume film and entertainment content on their mobile phone. So it's obvious that this is going to be rolled out. I think what's interesting is the sort of from sort of the get-go, it involves Digital Virgo, who are going to, among other things, bring in carrier billing and phone-based billing for access to these services. So
that's right.
I think significant, or even more significant, is that it sort of shows that we, more of the companies we sort of deal with all the time are moving into the OTT space. They're moving into new markets, but I think also it's sort of again cementing carrier billing and other forms of mobile payment in there as a way of charging for these things. Yeah,
for sure. But what it also highlights, I think, is that so many of the service providers that sit in the middle of the telemedia value chain are not just one-dimensional anymore. And in fact, Digital Virgo also bring integration of local content to that deal, creation of a web app and digital marketing campaigns. So, one partner covers a whole range of major assets in that particular deal to help drive that content, thoroughly knee-deep into that market.
Indeed,
so
and it's
good for them.
I hate to bring it back to the R's, but it's also, Digital Virgo is effectively also kind of acting like a sort of content billing, etc., as a service for these people.
Okay, moving on. Now, I know this is something close to your heart. Well done, mate. You picked out education a long time ago. UK EdTech sector grew by a whopping 72% in 2020. Perhaps not that surprising given the COVID situation. And I love there's a new terminology associated with how COVID has had a positive impact on many areas of the telemedia business. This particular press release highlighted COVID as a hyper accelerator.
Oh, it is indeed. Well, yeah, I think sort of late last year we touched on the fact that most mobile services have probably seen about 5 years worth of acceleration and development in the space of 6 to 8 months across last year. But yeah, education. I mean, of course, it's not a surprise. Anyone out there with children or indeed grandchildren will know that they're all at home, and a lot of the schools aren't giving them enough to do. We're all turning to find ways of augmenting their education. But I think as well, the other thing that comes into this is a lot of people at home furloughed and bored who are looking to sort of improve themselves and teach themselves new things. So there's a lot of stuff about learning languages and learning new skills. And I think that too is a big area. I saw some news actually today, which hasn't actually gone up on the site yet, but will do later on, that shows that the biggest app growth area for 2021 is likely to be educational based apps.
Wow.
Which is set to grow by about 62%. And that's slightly ahead of business apps, which are also predicted to have a big surge. But EdTech, as they call it, is well and truly on the map. And I think there's a huge load of opportunities out there for telemedia. I mean, people want to access these things, and it's ideal for carrier billing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the press release goes on and says that EdTech exports pre-crisis were 170 million, or worth 170 million to the economy. Now expected to have topped 292 million as a result of the hyper accelerator effect of COVID-19. So, yeah, well done, mate. You picked that one out, and I guess the EdTech world
there's my finger on the pulse.
Look at you. Okay.
Also, the finger is on the pulse of healthcare, and health and well-being apps are also going to be massive this year.
Yeah. And in fact, later on, we're going to talk about some predictions that came from Centili, where they also pick out some interesting sectors that we should be aware of. Final news story: OTT TV and video subscriptions to reach 2 billion by 2025. Of course, we know that this area is, this particular vertical has been hot for a while. There's been numerous reports that have extolled the virtues of being part of that. And there's, again, some pretty big numbers associated with growth in this sector. This particular story, though, pointed out that the traditional broadcasters have a role to play in generating these particular sales.
I think so, yeah. I don't know whether they still consider, whether they consider Netflix to be amongst that traditional broadcasters. It's been around for quite a long time. Netflix has grown its subscriber base by 24% in 2020. I saw this morning. So yeah, but I think, yes, obviously the traditional TV companies are playing catch up now with all the streaming services. So of course they're going to drive a massive load of growth in it. But again, there's always opportunities, particularly with commercial broadcasters who will look for ways to monetize that streaming. So while the likes of public service broadcasters like the BBC here in the UK probably aren't going to be doing much with carrier billing, a lot of the other sort of commercial broadcasters will do around their OTT service. So I think we're going to see some interesting developments in how they make their content snackable, and what kind of content they also produce, and how TV programs might actually be sort of significantly changed, I think, in the coming year. A lot of much shorter to the point, especially with comedy and stuff. So yeah, some interesting things there to watch out for this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think the broadcast, or the traditional broadcast space, is going to be under quite a lot of strain, and it's going to have to move and change and move with the time, certainly. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to track that over the next 12 months. Okay, so moving on. We really do make a fuss about Centili, but they are so generous with their PR at the moment, and they've got plenty to shout about because they are celebrating their 10th year anniversary. So happy birthday to Centili. And as part of that anniversary celebration, they've had a lovely rebrand, which obviously I'm hoping you're going to see all over the pages of Telemedia magazine, news, online, Telemedia 8.1, etc. And as part of the celebrations, they've launched a multiple new as a service platform called Maestro to support the shifts in the market as a result of COVID in terms of payments, the move away from owned infrastructure to a subscription economy, which I thought was really interesting, because subscriptions have been sort of potentially a problem, but it's absolutely 100% now where the market wants to go in terms of the consumers. So we're moving away from ownership towards subscription, and obviously the conversational commerce boom fits into that as well. And so this platform has been designed to take account of all of those things. As a result of this news, or in tandem with this news, Centili did another one of their excellent C-suite in conversation sessions, which was hosted on Friday, which we sat in on. And that was featured Zoran Vasilev, the group CEO, Olivier Latant, the group COO, who I interviewed. And you can see that on the Telemedia 8.1 platform in the conference section. They are giants of the industry. These guys really are big, heavy hitters and great visionaries. And it was all held together beautifully by Dina, who's the SVP of marketing. And the two areas that they covered were conversational commerce and this idea of the end of ownership and the move towards subscriptions. And I know that you've got some thoughts on that session. I think it's pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, no, it was excellent, actually. It was a nice start to the year as well with it, I think, because it sort of did crystallize quite a lot of ideas. I mean, I think we've talked about conversational commerce quite a bit, so I don't want to sort of rehash that too much, but clearly it's that sort of kind of merging of messaging, payments, marketing into a sort of saleable thing through the channels where consumers are is going to be very powerful. And I think, as I said, sort of IMI, Cisco, that's a sort of another example of where that's also going to start to play through. What I thought was particularly interesting around conversational commerce with Centili was they did bring up bravely, I thought, the fact that there are some potential drags on it, or some hurdles that need to be cleared around sort of privacy, and trying to make sure that as such a booming way of doing things, it's not sort of horribly misused, and customers are suddenly finding they have to turn WhatsApp off because they're just being bombarded with essentially sort of poor marketing messages. So I think they had some ideas as to sort of how to address that. I think by working with only with respectable, well-known brands, and initially only using it on consumers that those brands already have a relationship with. But I think that is something that we need to keep a weather eye on going forwards. Is that this could become a bit of a nightmare if it's misused. There's also issues around GDPR, which they talked about it very much, obviously, from a European perspective because they're based in Europe. But obviously now that the UK is no longer in Europe, has made me wonder what happens here with GDPR.
I'm sure
we're no longer, strictly speaking, bound by it. Well, we are sort of in terms of a transition phase, but essentially we could lose that. So we might well see that the UK might become a bit of a Wild West in terms of conversational commerce, but let's hope not. The other thing,
although we've got the image for the Wild West now, Paul, so we'll fit it perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, as you were saying, was about the subscription idea. I initially, when I was watching the podcast that they did, I was assuming they meant about consumer subscription, which obviously is really growing. But actually what they mean is businesses subscribing to services. So, this comes down to their platform launch, as you said, and this ours idea is that, they're going to sell access to whatever corporates want as a service, and they can just turn on and off the bits they want. And that includes content and messaging and billing and the customer management and the data and all the rest of it. And we did talk about this last year. It's an excellent idea, and I think definitely something we're going to see in 2021. They've already got 10 customers signed up to this, at least 10, more than 10, I think they said. And they've already signed up people like banks and OTT companies as well as telcos. So some interesting stuff going on there, and an interesting start to the year in their 10th anniversary podcast. Definitely, well worth a listen if it's once it's out there.
There is a link to that on this very video. So I think if they just click on the link,
check it out.
Yeah, it's very good. Just on that, finally, I mean, when I asked a question regarding conversational commerce, as that it's been highlighted as being a red hot route to market for advertisers, and I asked them what they thought, or not necessarily advertisers, but I asked them what they felt their top 3 markets in 2021 would be, for which verticals would be using conversational commerce the most. Not surprising, gaming came up first, but very interesting. Ticketing, transportation, of course, again, we've seen Centili have already made great strides in that area. But Zoran also mentioned deliveries, and again, that's very much off the back of the COVID landscape, where he's we've seen this massive move towards online shopping, and if you might have had a few Amazon parcels arriving in the old days, and now you just everything is being delivered. And of course, that is just a massive sector. It's exploded, and of course, conversational commerce is one of the most perfect ways of interacting with that kind of service. So I think he's dead right, and deliveries, I think, is something that you're going to be writing about in 2021, perhaps. Whereas you haven't done it in the past. So moving on, I think we are going to call this the end of chapter 1. Sorry,
end of part 1.
End of part 1, even though we've run on way more than we should have. So I'll see you on the other side for part 2, Paul.
Yeah, see you in part 2.